A very big welcome to Bishop John, and very many thanks for coming to speak to us during the season of creation, especially as you're just about to go off on your pilgrimage first thing tomorrow. So I'm not going to say very much. I just want to talk a little bit about the lay community of St. Benedict to anyone who doesn't know very much about us. We were born in 1971, started in 1971, inspired by the monastic community at Worth Abbey. That's really where we came from. We've grown over those 40 years, and we're now, I think, over 200 members. We're an inclusive, lay-led, intergenerational and ecumenical community based on the gospel and the rule of St. Benedict. 1,500 years old, but still very, very relevant today. And we have a group within our community very curious and committed to caring for creation. And it's us who have helped to organize some of the events during this year's season of creation, rather a special one with the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. So many thanks, Bishop John, for joining us. And I'm going to hand over to Father Christopson now, who's going to introduce you.
Yes, Bishop John, it's so good to have you with us on Sunday evening, particularly knowing that you're rushing off tomorrow morning. You were appointed Bishop of Salford and found time to take the Bishops' Conference of England and Wales responsibility as lead bishop for the environment, and leading by your example to create a Laudato Si centre where you live in Salford to be used for training and leading efforts in the Catholic Church on climate change. We look forward to hearing more about this, and many of us would be keen to visit should the occasion arise. Earlier, you were appointed as chair of CAFOD, and many of us took part in the CAFOD webinar celebrating the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si earlier in this season of creation. You were born in Sheffield and attended Rosminian schools, and going up to study law at Trinity College, Oxford, and were called to the bar in 1976. However, feeling called by God to discern a vocation, you joined the Rosminians as a novice, later transferring to train for the secular priesthood in Westminster Diocese. You were ordained priest in 1983, and in 2005 you were appointed as auxiliary bishop in the diocese. And in 2014 you were appointed Bishop of Salford, where you've bravely undertaken a reorganisation of the diocese, heralding a possible way for other dioceses to follow. Katie has said a little bit about our own community, and that through our Caring for Creation group, we've taken the climate crisis seriously, but always very anxious to learn more. Bishop John, on this 10th anniversary of our late Pope Francis' encyclical letter, Laudato Si, we look forward to your talk and how we can better care for God's wonderful creation.
Thank you very much. I hope that I am unmuted and that people can hear me. Good.
That's fine.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to address you this evening, and I hope anything I say can be of some help. Let's begin with a prayer. Loving Father, we thank you for the gift of our created world, of which you have made us stewards and guardians. We thank you for the abundance of goodness which you have entrusted to us. We must acknowledge and accept that we have failed to care for your gift to us. We have much to learn, and we need to repair our world for future generations. In your love for us, even as we have failed, teach us the way to restoration and repair, that we may celebrate the richness and beauty of all that you have entrusted to us. We make this prayer through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, I would like to begin with some good news. There's no doubt that in the last 10 years, significantly, I believe, because of the publication of Pope Francis's letter Laudato Si and the publicity given to the Paris Agreement in 2015, that the subject of climate change and our need to care for the environment, our common home, has greatly increased. And I say that's particularly true among young people. I've had the privilege of visiting many schools and seen the enthusiasm of their pupils for learning about the environment and undertaking projects in their school grounds by which they learn about nature, growing food, respecting and accommodating biodiversity, and recognizing the challenge of waste and the need for recycling. And if I may, I'd like to tell you about one visit I made to a school in Blackburn. I arrived at about 9:30 in the morning and all the pupils were outside. I thought, that's strange. They should be in class by now. As I parked the car, one of the pupils, a boy aged 9, I think, came and said, "Bishop, would you like to come with me? I'll show you our environmental garden." And he took me by the hand and we walked over to a very green space. He began, "Bishop John, you can see that the garden has raised flower beds. This allows for disabled access and ease of access for the elderly. The beds are made with eco-bricks. You do know what an eco-brick is, do you, Bishop? It's a single-use plastic container, usually a bottle, which is filled with single-use plastic, which could otherwise be buried in landfill or dumped in the sea as a danger to sea life." He then went on to explain the variety of vegetables and fruits that they were growing, and he must have spoken for about 5 minutes. Then he looked at me with a serious expression and asked, "Any questions, Bishop?" This education of the young is occurring without any element of fear for the future. But there is clear statistical evidence that many more young people, particularly teenagers, are suffering stress and fear about the future because of news reports elsewhere in media and social media. But there are many good projects being adopted in some cities, like Manchester, which has increased public transport in electric vehicles. And there are many organizations and communities that are promoting good environmental practices concerning diet, conserving electricity and water, recycling, sharing travel. There are projects concerning insulation of buildings and the promotion of wind and solar power. Some African countries in particular have made great strides in providing solar power for millions of people. The Guardians of Creation project is helping in adapting church buildings with insulation, heating, solar panels. There may be substantial costs involved which delay action, but the means for achieving these ends are now readily available. And there are the diocesan environmental leads for all dioceses in England and Wales. They meet regularly online and they're about to meet in person. They would have done last week, but for the tube strike in London. And they share good practice and promote it. And this avoids landing another chore on bishops' desks. And we have our Laudato Si centre here at Salford, which is used for education, for well-being groups, and hopefully we have a sense of spirituality about it. We've had, since September 2023, over 7,000 guests, and it's beginning to be a focus for good learning, I think. From a religious perspective, I believe that many of the world's religious faiths have recognized the priority of climate repair as a foundation of their belief. Christianity seems to have ignored the concept of care for our common home, probably because there was no real understanding of the damage being done. And that damage was not substantial before the Industrial Revolution. Pope Francis's encyclical letter Laudato Si has been followed by Al-Mizan, an Islamic document that echoes the same priorities as Laudato Si. There was clear evidence of our interfaith understanding of care for creation when in 2023, an interfaith group from Manchester, including faith leaders, politicians, and environmentalists, travelled to Rome for an audience with Pope Francis. The group included Christians, Muslims, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus, and Jains, local politicians, and MPs and environmentalists. And in those few days of our discussions, there was unanimous agreement about our different faiths' need to promote care for our common home as part of our belief. Recognizing this aspect of our common belief leads to the possibility of ground-level response and behavior. 85% of the world's population claim to belong to one of the world's major faiths, which provides us with great opportunities for educating and promoting individual action by living our faith. And that 85% does not include the religious beliefs of the indigenous peoples who've actually lived for centuries in harmony with their environments and from whom we have much to learn. So there is good news. But now we come to less good news. While all this is to be welcomed and valued, it falls far short of the response which is urgently required to the reality of the warming of the planet. The successive COP events since the Paris Agreement of 2015 have promoted serious discussion and endorsed some important decisions. But the participant nations have failed in just about every case to implement those decisions in full. We must hope that COP30 in November will not disappoint in the same way. For example, how important it has been to recognise the need for and to establish a loss and damage fund to assist those nations already most affected by climate change events. But the fund amounts to only millions of dollars per year, when billions of dollars were agreed as necessary. Despite the clear, accepted understanding of the damage done by the use of fossil fuels, the mining of fossil fuels has not declined, and some nations, such as the United States and Norway, are increasing production. Alarmingly, just 2 weeks ago, Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, made a speech in Scotland, declaring that if elected to government, she would remove all caps on fossil fuel exploration in the North Sea and have no restriction on the granting of licenses to drill for oil. She's determined that Norway, drilling in the same area, should not have it all. This represents a complete reversal on previous commitments. Her reasoning being that Norway is accessing this North Sea resource and this will stimulate their economic growth. Labour, as government, have already responded that it will maintain its commitments to carbon zero while still achieving economic growth. I must admit that I need to be a bit more convinced that Labour is keeping to its stated goals and targets, especially in the building of 1 million new homes with less environmental care and concern. While China has more wind and solar power than the rest of the world combined, it still maintains its extensive use of coal, opening new coal mines and exporting much coal to India. Fossil fuels still provide enormous profits for the few. It is said that of the 94 nations that signed the landmark Paris Agreement in 2015, with its determination to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, not one nation has met the targets of the agreement. By one of his many executive decrees, President Trump has now formally withdrawn the United States from the Paris Agreement, the only nation to do so. And the Paris Agreement lacks any structure for enforcement of the decisions made there. Trump is known for his drill, baby, drill statement. The powers that be in politics, business, and industry seem to be blind to the events that are occurring more frequently and with more severe impact on every continent and region. Just in the last few months, we have seen so much. The violent storms across the southern states of the United States, and the wildfires that encroached on the suburbs of Los Angeles, causing billions of dollars of damage. Canada began the wildfire season earlier than expected this year, with 160 wildfires. This number rose to 470 blazes, stated as, quote, out of control, unquote, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. There have been the destruction by storms on the east coast of Australia, endangering Sydney's suburbs. Japan has suffered typhoons and floods of unprecedented force. There was a heat wave with record temperatures that engulfed several countries of southern Europe for weeks, followed by the unprecedented wildfires in Spain, France, Greece, and Portugal. Some news reports here reduce this to merely reporting that British holidaymakers were moved to hotels where meals were no longer included in their holiday package, rather missing the point, I think. There were the floods that destroyed so much of Valencia and the surrounding area in Spain. China and Mongolia have suffered multiple storms and floods in various regions with loss of life. The floods in Pakistan, India, and Nepal have destroyed villages and claimed over 600 lives in Pakistan alone. And this is just less than 2 years after 30 million people, a third of Pakistan's population, were displaced by floods in 2023. The list goes on. While some, but by no means all, climate events reach our news broadcasts, they're soon replaced by other news stories, and we hear little or nothing of the ongoing impact on the people made homeless and the length of time for repair to homes and infrastructure. Nor do we hear much of the destruction of agricultural land and the loss of crops, which threatens increasing areas of our globe with the consequence of food insecurity and the inflated prices for the food that is produced. The continuing floods in Pakistan have destroyed agricultural land, and in the Punjab, 60% of the province's rice crops and 30% of its sugarcane has been lost. There's also the more hidden impact of heat on health. For example, Spain recorded 1,149 deaths attributed to a 16-day heat wave between the 3rd and the 18th of August this year. We're beginning to hear more about the shortage of drinking water. The WRI index shows that 25 countries housing 1/4 of the global population face extreme high water stress each year, regularly using up almost their entire available water supply. While there is the intensity of rainfall in many parts of the world, engineering projects are insufficient in collecting the rain in reservoirs. Rather more gradual, but with equally dramatic effect, is the warming of the oceans and the sea rise occurring due to the melting of the ice caps. Antarctica is losing ice mass through melting at an average rate of about 136 billion tons per year, while Greenland is losing twice that amount, about 267 billion tons per year, all contributing to inevitable sea level rise. A recent report stated that the ice melt of Antarctica alone will cause a 3-meter rise in sea levels. Add Greenland's impact to that, and we're talking of 9 meters sea rise. This will have a very physical and permanent impact on many of the 40% of the world's population who live in coastal cities and regions. Notably, cities such as New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong. And there are the additional inland regions that are at sea level or below. And we're only beginning to understand the impact on sea life and the well-being of fish, which provide so much of our food as the oceans warm. And we cannot ignore the impact of conflict on our environment. The emissions from heavy armored vehicles and tanks, the explosion of drones and missiles, the fires and destruction of cities, the spoiling of agricultural lands, all adds on a large scale to the damage done to our world. And wars usually resolve nothing and build ongoing tensions. When we're speaking about the environment, we cannot overlook Pope Francis's constant reminder that everything is connected. When severe climate change events increasingly strike vulnerable areas, the question of forced economic migration rises. The Institute for Economics and Peace, an international think tank, estimates that there could be as many as 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2050. This is a cause for alarm on many fronts. With migration comes increase in poverty, disruption of children's education and family security, modern slavery and human trafficking increases, indigenous cultures are lost, and resentment at the arrival of migrants can lead to conflict. In 2022, the number of climate refugees was estimated at 32.6 million. If the IEP prediction is correct, the 2022 figure will multiply 37 times in 25 years. As anti-migrant rhetoric grows globally, fears as to how migrants will be received multiply. We've already seen resistance and rejection on a growing scale, as in the demonstrations yesterday in London. Whilst climate refugees might be victims of racism and discrimination, the reality is that these refugees have done very little or nothing to cause their displacement. They are simply desperate to survive. A climate readiness index shows that the 80 countries most at risk of climate change and forced migration are from the global south. These are nations that are often the least responsible for historic and current carbon emission. These millions, forced to seek livelihoods away from their homelands, will be arriving in countries where seasonal disruption caused by climate change is already impacting on agriculture and greatly reducing their own food production. More people seeking less food is a foundation for conflict. We need to take stock of where we are. In the Catholic Church, we're celebrating a Jubilee year of hope. Pope Francis was adamant that each and every one of us has a part to play. Pope Leo, even in the first months of his pontificate, has endorsed Pope Francis's urgent concern for actions to repair the environment and our responsibility to do so for the well-being of future generations. In his first statement to us as Pope, immediately after his election, as he came out on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica on the 8th of May, Pope Leo spoke of three priorities: peace, unity, and bridge building. It would seem to me that these are a good foundation for our response to climate change. Pope Leo speaks of the importance of establishing peace, which will allow us to work together to tackle poverty and forced migration. With the establishment of peace, nations could focus on the global priorities of the environment and food security. Pope Leo continues to appeal for the need to care for our common home and repair the damage of climate change. And in this, Pope Leo is also leading by example, putting faith into action in making the Vatican State the most likely first carbon zero state in the world. Important agreements have recently been reached about providing the sufficient solar energy for the Vatican in the purchase of open space for solar panels a short distance from Rome. There's also the development of Laudato Si gardens at Castel Gandolfo, which educate in care for the environment. Pope Leo also speaks of unity and has demonstrated the same priority of welcome and engagement with other Christians and leaders of other faiths, concentrating on celebrating what we believe in common. Unity does not mean uniformity, that we should all be the same, but a unity that recognizes the great diversity of people who, working together with their different gifts and skills, can achieve so much. I like the image provided by St. Paul in his letter to the Corinthians. Just as a human body, though it is made up of many parts, all those parts, though many, make up one body. So it is with Christ. Our unity celebrates our diversity in gifts and skills. Pope Leo also speaks about building bridges, how transforming that would be in our world where there's so much division, confrontation, and broken relations. We must recognize the need to work together to face this global challenge. We need to end the conflicts which consume vast wealth and distract us from this one issue of climate change that challenges us all. There needs to be a commitment in industry to work not for maximum profits, but for clean technologies. And politicians must listen more carefully to the people they claim to represent and lead, people who are expressing their growing concern for the future of our planet and the livelihood of future generations. Politicians should not be so concerned for short-term results for re-election, but for a long-term vision, for a solution to climate change and global well-being. This long-term vision will promote good politics and I believe will engage public support. Many of the climate change experts claim that we will now inevitably breach the 1.5 degree warming, but with hope, we must continue to exercise every possible action to limit the warming. Every 1/10 of a degree of warming that we avoid will have an important beneficial impact on our world. Hope is essential and must be celebrated, but it cannot be something static. Hope calls for and insists on urgent action. We have the knowledge and the technology to repair our damaged world. Although plundered of its resources, our planet has a resilience to flourish again and provide generously for all our needs. While politicians, business, and industry are essential for the dramatic changes needed, each and every one of us, as Pope Francis insisted, has our part to play. I believe that our common conversion to making environmental care and global priority would be the beginnings of a global society which establishes peace, builds bridges, and helps us to work in unity for the well-being of the earth, of which we are stewards and guardians, and express and provide for a genuine care for the dignity of all people. The publication of Laudato Si and the Paris Agreement of 2015 have not been lost in history. There is still time to repair our world for future generations, and we must not lose hope. But hope is nothing unless it searches for and implements actions. And in those actions, each one of us has a part to play. Just like to end with an image that Pope Francis left us a few months before he died. He said, every reservoir and dam and river in the world is made up of single drops of water. And without those single drops of water, there would be no reservoirs, rivers, and dams. Drops of water are essential. Well, let's be those drops of water. We are essential, and working together, we can achieve great things. So we must ask ourselves what we can do as individuals. No gesture is so small as to be irrelevant. And it doesn't mean that we never eat meat again, that we shower once a month and sell our cars, to always use public transport, but we can engage with small changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop John. That was a marvellous talk, so clear, so insistent on the urgency of climate change, and that finishing with that marvellous image of the single drops of water, bringing out that thing in Laudato Si of the interconnectedness of each and every one of us. So thank you very, very much indeed. And I think that will stay with us, certainly stay with me for a very long time. So now we have a chance to have some questions from the people who've been listening. So I can't see anyone there. I've just got the
Well,
spot.
if we can ask people to put
Yeah.
a hand up virtually like this, then you'll pop out to the front and I'll spotlight you, and then you can ask your question to Bishop John.
So if you have a question, but thank you very much, Bishop John.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So
no difficult questions, please.
So Patrick, you can have it out with Patrick tomorrow on the journey to Rome. Patrick and Lucy.
Thank you, Bishop John. And we, like you, also have to go off and pack before travelling with Salford to Rome tomorrow. So see you then. I recently visited you and others at Laudato Si. I wondered if you could just say a few words to the assembled group about what you're trying to do at the Laudato Si Centre.
Very good. Yes, when Laudato Si came out as the encyclical, we began to think about what we could do here at Wardley Hall. We've got acres and acres, mainly virgin woodland, but there was a walled garden, which was simply a mown lawn. And we thought, well, we can begin something there, can't we? We can show something of education and invite people in with their ideas. And people came, and we've developed what is an extraordinary space, which is so overgrown with agriculture, flowers, fruit, vegetables. And lots of people come, over 7,000 people have come in the last 2 years. And there are all sorts of groups, children's groups. And this is particularly beneficial for so many children who just have no contact at all with nature. You show them vegetables and you ask where carrots come from. They say, well, Tesco. And no, you pull one out of the soil and it's grown. And we have well-being groups, and we have lots of people who come to see what they can do in their school grounds or church property grounds to cultivate and to make environmental spaces. And then we have the Woodland Trail, which is really a pathway through some woods where there's various lessons can be learnt. And we've got a lady who gives a lot of spiritual instruction and celebrates little liturgies and things which seem to be welcomed by everyone who's experienced them. So it's doing very well. And really, you can hardly get into the walled garden now for the sheer growth, particularly of willow. I didn't realize that willow could grow enormous amounts. In 6 years, we got this great tent of willow, and children can walk in it and sit down in sort of a room inside. Quite extraordinary.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Patrick, for giving Bishop John the chance to tell us about that. It sounds wonderful. If only each diocese could have a Laudato Si centre, it would be wonderful, right?
Bishop John, you mentioned, I think, a figure of 85% of the world belongs to a religion, one of the major religions, or a figure something like that.
Yes.
And I was thinking, if that's the case, how does that relate to our experience in the lay community as being getting to know each other often happens better when you're working with people on a common project rather than just sitting and talking to each other. And I was wondering if you had any examples from the Salford diocese of interfaith collaboration in addressing the climate crisis or the biodiversity crisis. It's something certainly has been on my mind for a while, the interfaith dimension of this, and how can we actually make steps to come together, to work together on this?
Well, as I said, we had this interfaith pilgrimage to Rome in 2023 with representatives of several religions, but that was leaders, and we meet fairly regularly actually, and the atmosphere between us is good, but it's getting that dripping down to the common faithful in each church, in each faith. And I've noticed increasingly our visitors to Laudato Si include groups that would be interfaith, people who have come to learn. And I think that's, it's a bit too slow, but I think it's working to a degree that we're open to anyone who wants to come to Wardley. And we've had we've had some Islamic groups who've been. It's getting the word out. But if we could, I suppose, if the teachers of these faiths could recognize that environment and care for the environment is actually fundamental to their faith as it is to Christianity, then if they're preaching about it, then we get people doing really heroic things. But the word's not spreading probably as quickly as it needs to do to get people engaged. But I also think that we've talked a lot in recent years about the disinterest among young people for religious faith. It happens in the schools, all right, but sort of ends at the school gates. And I think that if we can show that environment is really important to us, it's something that they're engaging with very well, and it may be a great evangelizing tool that will bring them back. Well, we're already hearing about Gen Z, aren't we, coming back to church in big numbers. But I think if we can show that the environment really is something that's important, we may find that they think, well, fine, if the church is serious about this, I want to get involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
A lovely vision, the urgency, making us build the bridges. Adam, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Bishop John, for that very inspiring talk. And you started off with hope and that wonderful story of the 9-year-old who you met, and then talked about fear. And the fear is really all pervasive for young people because they're hearing all the time the stories about how it's their generation who have to do something about it, and the sense of pressure which is on them, amongst other pressures. So I just wondered, are we doing enough through education to really counter that? Obviously we have a big education service in the Catholic Church. Do you think that we're doing enough, and what else can we do as church to sort of help young people through that?
Well, when I went to that school and that delightful young man took me around and instructed me about the environment, I went to the head teacher and I said, all the schools out in the grounds, shouldn't you be in class at this time? And he said, no, the children love being out here. They love the environment work we're doing. They read about the environment, they write about it, they're learning about the science of it. Our literacy levels are going up very nicely. And I thought, well, this is a very good way in. I do think that the syllabus for schools is including more about the environment. Obviously, you've got to keep it within the context of the necessary subjects that we've got to learn. But I think there is a growing emphasis, and it can be done particularly in primary schools, with that sense of enjoyment and appreciation for environment. A little bit more difficult in secondary schools because they're sort of in the adolescence and they're also getting worked up about exams and that sort of thing. But I think that the primary school children now will have that enthusiasm for the environment when they go into secondary schools. So there's more of an emphasis, but it's going to vary from one school to another, really. and the opportunities. We're very fortunate here. A lot of our schools in the Diocese of Salford have extensive grounds, and we're having some success in getting them to use it, even if it's rewilding and understanding why we're rewilding and what biodiversity is all about. But it still remains a major challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very impressed indeed by the talk that Bishop John has given us. And I thought if only that talk could be presented much more freely to other people. Is there a way in which we would be free to show it to, first it's being recorded, so I presume that's the intention, that somehow it should be made more available. Am I correct?
As far as I'm concerned, it's available.
Is it? Thank you very much. We'll have to think about that. I'm sure you could share it. We just check with Peter and Adam, make sure that you have the recording.
It'll be available on our website, probably tomorrow or Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a good question, Peter. Thank you. Okay, Jed and Niobe.
Thank you. You mentioned several times, Bishop, the trio of politicians, business people, and industry who have such power over the decisions that happen as regards our environment. Do you have any sense of what we can do to shift the narrative in favour of caring for creation among this triumvirate?
Well, I think the petitioning to politicians is working better than it has done, but there's still room for efforts there. The difficulty is that our economics, our systems allow the rich to get richer, and that pushes more and more people into poverty. In Manchester, we've got the appalling statistic that although we're in the 5th most prosperous country in the world, 42% of our children live in poverty in this city, which is just an appalling statistic. But we've got our billionaires, haven't we? And one wonders how we can be better sharing some of that wealth. I mean, if 1 or 2 billionaires were to empty their pockets, we'd be solving world hunger in no time. But there's only 1 or 2 billionaires that I can think of who are really constructive in using their money for the benefit of others. Yes, I think we've got to be insistent in the way we can be in telling industry that we're not going to buy products that are really manifestly damaging the environment. We're shifting to electric cars and things like that. That's good. And with business, we've got this obsession with profits and growth. And I'm not sure that economic growth is the answer all the time. It's the way that we use our economy to benefit everybody who's in it. And that is going to take a fair bit of persuasion, I think, of people and politicians alike. But I get bored with the constant references in news broadcasts about our efforts to grow the economy, when that's just seems like producing more and very often stuff that we don't need. I was reading a statistic the other day about clothing and the amount of damage that clothing does by the fact that we buy it and throw it away. It goes into landfill. In the making of it, we poison rivers with all the dye that's used, and even bringing the cotton to the manufacturers is from across the world is causing enormous emissions in transport. From virtually every point of view, clothing was not doing us very much benefit.
Thank you.
Very interesting to hear that. Clothing from Manchester and the growth model, which seems so flawed at the moment. Thank you, Bishop John. Are there any other questions? Sally Chapman.
Oh, yes. Hi, hi, Bishop, and thank you very much for your talk. It's very, very interesting. I'm from the Plymouth Diocese, but today I was involved in an action, the Christian Climate Action. They've had a big national day of prayer today, which has been focusing on the cathedrals in the Church of England cathedrals, and with a strapline, "Stop crucifying creation," and it's a call for the churches, to be more radical in their approach to tackling climate change. So obviously it's been just concentrated on the Church of England. I just wondered what your view of that was and how you feel the Catholic Church could be more prophetic in its outlook and in each diocese, and what they could be doing, how they could be more radical.
Okay, well, I think the Catholic Church has been wonderfully radical with the actions of Pope Francis, and the fact that we have Laudato Si, which is the most widely published encyclical in history. And I think that really had an impact, not just in the church, but beyond the church. What's happening in the church at the moment? Well, we've got various projects, things like Guardians of Creation, working for giving ways of assisting in good environmental practice and for our buildings particularly. And we've got really to urge people to take their part, even though we may be drops of water. Now, we've got to balance that. I feel quite sensitive here in the Diocese of Salford. I know all my clergy know perfectly well that I'm lead for the environment for the Bishops' Conference, and I've got to be very careful to make sure they don't get sick of hearing about the environment. You can overplay it. I do write to them about it, and I've issued pastoral letters about it, but you could easily get to the point where they, oh, not again, really, will he never stop, sort of thing. It's getting that balance. And also I report to the bishops twice a year in plenary about what's going on in the world, what's going on in the church, and hope that I'm assisting and in encouraging the bishops to take a stronger lead. And they have their own ways of doing that. But of course, every bishop is his own boss in his own diocese. But I think, generally speaking, we are making progress. My concern is that it needs to be urgent, and I'm not sure that we've got that urgency at the moment. So we press on, being as insistent as I can be, but without, getting backs up and, well, for heaven's sake, go away, because that's not going to serve anybody's purpose, really.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for all you do. Yeah, you're a great example.
Good.
And thank you. I think your talk was a real model of not pulling any punches on the urgency, but also giving us some hope. So Pauline has her hand up, Pauline Gray. I think this might have to be our last question, Pauline, but please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bishop, for your talk as well. Niobe and Jed were talking about how we might be able to do something to, with regard to this triumvirate of politicians and big tech and so I was wondering whether you might sort of comment on the climate and nature bill, which has just which is waiting for its second reading in the House of Commons at the moment, because that seems to me, contacting our MPs with regard to support for that bill, yes, might help. And I wondered whether you as Bishop had done anything to raise awareness of that bill.
I have to admit, I haven't had much knowledge of that bill yet. We've been concentrating on assisted dying and all that sort of thing at the moment.
Well, yes, I appreciate
and
that.
season of creation. But that's the prompt which I shall take away from this meeting this evening as to something I need to get down to doing. But the petitioning of MPs actually seems to have been of some benefit. I'm talking now about the assisted dying bill. That really seems to have changed a good number of minds, and also in the Lords, House of Lords too. So I'm very keen that we get to know our local MP, and they get to know what we think, because they're supposed to be there to lead us and to understand who we are. And there seems to be some very loud voices that need to be heard. And legislation is a primary place where we've got to be active. If we call ourselves a democratic nation, then we've got to use the plan. It's not just getting an MP into Parliament, it's making sure that the MP knows what we think. So I will take that away. Thank you very much.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Bishop John. Thank you for your talk and everything you do. Thank
Bishop
you.
John, can I just ask you a last question? So if you were suddenly given a day off, a bishop's day off, but it had to be spent at your Laudato Si centre, what would you do?
Oh, I'd be very happy to be helping Sarah, who is the chief. Well, I don't like to say a gardener. She's the chief operator in the Laudato Si, and she'd give me plenty of jobs to do, I think. But I'd also love to spend time in the woodland walk, which is very much close to nature. And although there's the buzz of a motorway in the background, you can easily lose it. And there's some lovely things going on. And I think it's getting close to nature is something of a privilege for so many people these days. They just cannot get away from their apartment blocks in city centres where if there's any green space at all, it's a very sort of ordered patch of park. And it doesn't speak of nature very much at all. So that's what I do. But I'd love to think that some people listening to this talk this evening will think about organising a trip to Laudato Si and come and see what we're doing.
Yes, thank you so much. Richard, it'd have to be quick because we're very near.
I was just saying the late community of St Benedict has arranged a visit to the Laudato Si Centre, and we're booked in for the 9th of May 26, and I'm sure there'll be something on our website going up about it soon.
Good.
And we'll bring our wheelbarrows.
Good. Well, I certainly hope I shall be here to greet you.
Thank you very much, Richard. So perhaps, Bishop John, you could close this really fantastic discussion that we've had. Very,
Yes.
very many thanks to you.
Okay.
You could close it with a prayer.
Yes, we end with a prayer. Loving Father, creator of our world, help us to learn about and to value the reality of your gift to us. Celebrating hope, we renew our commitment to work in whatever way we may be able to care for our common home and provide for the well-being and dignity of all our brothers and sisters and repair the environment for future generations. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Well, a very big thank you, Bishop John. I don't know whether you'd like to say something, Father Chris, as you invited Bishop John. And a big thank you to you for making that invitation, Chris.
Thank you so much, Bishop John, and thank you for what you've done for members of our family. And it's just great to have heard you speaking this evening. So God bless. Have a wonderful pilgrimage and a little bit of rest as well.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy the gardens in Castel Gandolfo that you told us about.
Yep, I'm going there twice, 2 conferences, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing.
Look at you. Okay, well, good night, everybody. Thank you all very much. I'm sorry I didn't manage to welcome you all, but thank you for coming. And once again, thank you to Bishop John.